The Sword of Damocles, a novel of God's Legion, by J.T. Dowdy. Chapter 1. It has been proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that the angel Damocles has committed grievous sin by refusing to follow His Holiness's lawful orders. It is therefore right and proper he should be punished for this transgression against the people of the host ascendancy. Yet we are not monsters in this just land of ours. Damocles shall be summarily stripped of his title, and he shall have his name stricken from the honored rolls of our leaders. He is to be exiled far from here and given only enough to survive one host standard year. It shall be up to him whether or not he seeks salvation in honest work, or he gives up and surrenders to a just and fitting fate. Proclamation of sentence, given by the presiding arbiter, the Archangel Michael. The inability for a true angelic being to sleep was an ever-constant blazing fire of hatred for the former host angel Damocles, as he sat in his dilapidated office chair, going over end-of-month payroll for his mercenary company. Sleep would allow him to forget the endless scrolling lines of numbers ending in negative balances. Even just being able to meditate would be a blessing, yet, in his over 700,000-year existence, he had never learned to master such a simple task as turning his mind off. With a cry of disgust bordering on inarticulate rage, the angel pushed himself back from his cluttered desk to stare at the wobbling ceiling fan while reaching for his habitual pack of cigarettes he kept near him at all times. He withdrew the last of the slender sticks, which was crooked and bent. Lighting the vice from an ancient lighter made from a chemical rifle casing, Damocles inhaled deeply as he closed his eyes, while slowly letting the acrid smoke blow out of his nostrils to form curling clouds, which blew away thanks to a small desk fan. He reached out to grab his coffee carafe from its warmer, since he did not bother with cups, only to remember he had been forced to choose between ammunition and spare parts for his single-seater mechs instead of food and drink. He looked back to his hollow screen to glare at the uncomfortably large, blinking red number at the bottom of a column. The current universal war against a race, long since buried to the annals of time, had been an economic boom for small mercenary companies, like the Sword of Damocles. However, the angel was no fool, and would not willingly take jobs which had headliners such as cannon fodder requested, and will pay upon completion of suicidal job against beings who think at the speed of light. Fighting the so-called first creation was not a business to be taken lightly, and the angel had been paying the price for not following the current money for several years now. All of his jockeying and all of his scheming to get out of dying for nations throwing money around like electrons in a high-tech society was now over, since he was officially as broke as a joke. Grabbing another half-used pack from his desk, the angel lit another cigarette with the stub of his old one before grinding the old butt out in an overflowing ashtray. "Well," he murmured to no one in particular, "either we start taking suicide missions, or we go back to the drudgery of that Golden Army life." The angel shook his head at the very thought of returning to the society which had excommunicated him long ago. Like all of his angelic brethren in the host ascendancy, Damocles had been a captain of a fine bunch of men and women who gave their service to Creator Elohim. Together with his partner Chamiel, the two angels had forged their unit into one of the best fighting groups in the entirety of host space, coming close to even being a match for the archangels and their retinues. For hundreds of thousands of years, mortals from all walks of life trained their bodies and minds to the absolute peak to be a part of the Sword of Damocles. That is, until their Tier 1 unit was ground to powder due to their superiors' ignorance. Like most host angels, Damocles and Chamiel had been spoon-fed a long list of lies by the archangels above them when it concerned a nation known as the Legion. Officially, the host and Legion were sworn mortal enemies, even though no large-scale wars had ever taken place, according to the angel's memory. Like his siblings, Damocles had always been told it was due to the superiority of his father, Elohim's resplendent golden armies. The truth, however, was a matter which cut deep and still festered. Their horrific combat loss had led to the events which saw Damocles exiled, and which saw the shattering of his partner's mind due to a loss of purpose. The angel stared at his ancient mirror-polished golden armor, which stood on a stand by the door of his office. In the burnished breastplate designed to reflect laser fire, he looked at his ragged appearance and was horrified by the face which glowered back. Once he had been considered handsome, now he looked beat down and worthless. Deep blue eyes stared back in the reflection from sunken skeletal eye sockets, from underneath a shaggy unkempt mane of dark brown hair. Next to his armor sat a picture of what the angel looked like in his prime. Yet another sad reminder of how the mighty always fall, as he used to be, quadruple in width with muscle. From Damocles's closed office door came the polite yet heavy knock of a large fist. "Leave me alone, chum," he said. "Right now is not the best of times." The door opened anyway, and a large, by mortal standards, woman filled the doorway. She was looking at the ground while fidgeting like a school child who had gotten in trouble. "I'm sorry," she said. "They said they cleared it with you, and I let them go." Damocles was up and out of his chair in an instant, and he rushed forward to grab his partner by the shoulders to look into her face. Though the woman was shorter than her partner by a foot, her head craned up to stare at the over 8-foot-tall form of Damocles. "What did you just say?" Damocles asked in a small voice, cursing himself for being so focused on the budget sheets he had ignored everything else going on around him. "They're all gone." The man gently pushed his partner out of the doorway to run the few steps it took to be in the center of the hollowed-out asteroid he had commissioned for a base. What used to be a lively barracks, filled with the shouts and curses of hard-bitten individuals and the endless clank-hiss of machinery, was now utterly silent. Most of the ammunition and weapons were gone, save for a few lass weapons. Gone was the food, though the angels did not require it. Gone were the ancient host mechs. Gone was everything to be replaced by the steady red lights of cycled airlocks, without anything attached to the outside. Damocles spun around to stare in horror at his partner, trying to not lash out in rage. His voice was panicked, almost an octave higher as he asked, "How did they take our crap without you stopping them?" "They said they had cleared it with you. By the time the ships undocked, it was too late." Damocles's right eyelid began to twitch as the energy left his body, and he sank to the metal deck to weep openly. With a howl of frustration, he drove a hammer fist into the armor plating to dent it with his greater-than-mortal strength. Chamiel took a step closer and asked, "Are you okay?" She was not concerned for their missing weapons and gear, only her partner's state of mind. The older angel shook his head as he let his anger evaporate. He knew his partner stood by and did nothing as they left. Perhaps she sympathized with them on some unknown level. Or perhaps she truly did not know what they were planning. Despite his desire to yell and scream at her, Damocles knew he would not. Not after he had done this to her when the sword of Damocles was shattered in battle due to his own arrogance. An angel was a being of spirit, and while they had physical bodies which moved and functioned like a mortal's would, they were clearly not the same. An angel had to have a physical vessel for their much larger soul. Otherwise they would exist like an incorporeal phantom, which was unable to do anything but think and go mad. existing essentially as nothing but thought and emotions, had a myriad of so-called benefits. But the fragility of such a mind when forced to accept certain realities had broken Chamiel. She was still a formidable fighter in her own right, but she was no longer the mental athlete she once was back when she was in her prime. Even Damocles could feel himself slipping when times became increasingly difficult. But he soldiered on to take care of his partner, as he always had. "We need to find work, chum," Damocles said in a small, quiet voice. "Maybe there is someone who can loan us a ship, or maybe we could bargain for one if we can find a customer. Hell, girl, we don't even have the money to buy air at this point." Both Damocles and Chamiel jumped as the barracks' hollow terminal flared into amber life while emitting a series of repeating beeps to inform those around it of an incoming message. Damocles twisted around on the floor to glare at the device as if it were a bomb or debt collector. He waved a hand at it and said, "Can you get that? I'm not exactly presentable at the moment for any customers." In truth, he found the timing deeply disturbing, as the universe had a bad habit of saving up problems to unload on him at once. Every fiber of his being was screaming at him to tell Chamiel to not answer, but the both of them had little choice. "Normal exclusions?" the woman asked. The male angel nodded. "Yeah, no first creation. I don't care how desperate we are not suicidal." Chamiel's heart-shaped face brightened as she now had something to do in which she was eminently qualified for. She tousled her hair and smiled mischievously, though she only touched the transmit audio button on the communicator. "You have reached the Sword of Damocles. Who or what needs killing?" A woman's voice replied, and it sounded more used to shouting orders than normal conversations. "I would like to hire your company for a small job, but times being what they are makes me hesitant to state my request over unsecured waves. May I dock with your rock so that we may talk in person?" Chamiel looked back to Damocles, who just shrugged some non-committal agreement. She pressed the transmit button and said, "We would be happy to receive you, miss." The signal was terminated as a too loud metal-on-metal clang reverberated through the hollow asteroid. Damocles was on his feet in an instant, looking around him as he watched what few tools were still on their racks shake like things possessed. Either whoever had just docked had come in too fast, or the ship which moved their floating home was massive. Something did not sit right with the angel, and his guts began to turn to water. The asteroid sensors should have let them know when any ship came within 100 million kilometers. He glanced at a far wall, which held a perpetual 2D hollow screen, which showed the immediate area around the asteroid like that of a traffic controller. There was nothing besides the normal rocks, which spun lazily with their home as they traveled a perpetual orbit around a star. One of the 3 red airlocks turned a solid green as compressors kicked on to equalize the pressure in the vestibule. Then, once more, as it equalized the pressure to match the inside of the asteroid. With the sound of moving metal, the vault-like door of the airlock slid sideways to the sound of heavy boots on the steel floor. 2 heavily armed and armored figures entered, which brought back uncountable nightmares for the 2 host angels. Out of the entirety of the known universes, only the Legion was able to field powered armor for all of their soldiers, as they were the only ones crazy enough to embrace the use of nanotechnology. Without nanites to fix and replace equipment and create ammunition, logistical supply chains would stretch beyond galaxies and be too easy to intercept and disrupt. Most nations' soldiers also had a healthy distrust for strapping something on their flesh which could reduce them down to their constituent molecules. Yet, no one ever said the seeming infinite legions of Creator Lucifer were sane. Immediately, Damocles could tell the 2 armored figures were angels just like him, due to their size and ultra-precise movements. From what little he understood about the Legion, they were also veterans of note, as their armor had the look of hard use, and their honor chains hung like ancient mail from their armor. All militaries adopted the use of awarding medals to their soldiers in some form or fashion for accomplishing great deeds. The Legion awarded them for surviving battles, and they took the form of impossibly slender chains which hung from their armor. These two wore stoles of chain, as well as kilts and boot toppers. One of the armored professional killers turned his helmet slightly to direct his voice without taking his eyes off of Damocles and Chamiel, and said, "We're clear in here." What appeared to be a middle-aged mortal woman strode out of the airlock with two more angelic bodyguards. She had piercing green eyes and strawberry blonde hair fixed back into a braided ponytail. She wore knee-high polished black jack boots over black breeches, and her deep purple colonial-style jacket's silver buttons and piping gleamed under the harsh artificial light. She wore a short sword at the waist, like all legionnaires, with a well-used rail pistol and spare magazines on her opposite hip. Though she appeared mortal, the burnished silver gorget around her throat signified the wearer of the device to be a centurion. Damocles did not know the nuances of their rank structure other than the three main ranks found in the field: Decurion, in charge of 10 men; Centurion, in charge of 100 men; and the legates, who could be in charge of several hundred to several thousand, depending on their tasking. The woman grimaced as she worked her jaw and lifted a hand to smack the side of her head to equalize the pressure in her ears. She was looking at Damocles, as it was obvious who the leader of the mercenary band was. "I am Centurion Amy Gulliver," she said. "Nice to finally meet the infamous Damocles and Chamiel." Chamiel's smile faded as the woman used their names. She was about to speak when Damocles placed his hand on his partner's shoulder and said, "We are famous for a great many things, and you will have to forgive us if we do not seem overly enthusiastic about having heretics in our home. Sorry, but old habits die hard. However, as you said, these are interesting times we live in, which forces us all to adapt to new circumstances. What exactly brought you all this way here?" The centurion looked as if she was having a cheese grater shoved against her gums as she spoke. A Legion noble had their child abducted. Naturally, we would wish to handle such a matter in-house, but politics being politics, we cannot be seen moving openly to recover the child. We would like you to find the child and bring them back safe and sound. Does this sound like something you would be capable of? Damocles's gut immediately told him the story was nothing more than a half-truth, as the Legion had plenty of specialist groups which could extract the missing child. Yet his bank account was glowing red like a demon, and the heretics came all this way and were therefore willing to pay. "Yes," the angel replied. "The sword will take the job. Our fee is 500,000 host shekels up front, plus travel costs, and an additional 100,000 for every week we are on the job. I will personally send weekly status updates, so you know we are not just sitting on our asses instead of working. We will, of course, require whatever information you have surrounding the child's abduction, and I will need all the background information on the family in case I have to get a bit more creative if we hit a dead end." The centurion made some pretense about thinking it over and nodded. "Sounds fair," she said. "Do you have a banking terminal?" Damocles pointed to the hollow terminal Chamiel had used to accept the call in the first place. The centurion walked over to it and passed her right wrist over it to deposit the agreed-upon amount. She unbuttoned the top 2 buttons on her uniform and withdrew an environmentally sealed folder with the mission's details. She set the folder on the terminal and nodded to the two host angels before departing with her men. Soon, the airlock lights shone red, and there was a hollow thud as whatever ship the Legionnaires had arrived on disconnected from the asteroid. Damocles shook his head while walking towards the plastic folder. As he was about to grab it, Chamiel pulled up the company's banking data and squealed with delight. Merciful Father, she paid us in Legion ducats. Those are like 3 times the value of a shekel. Yeah, Damocles replied half-heartedly as he picked up the folder to skim through its contents as his mind raced about what he needed to do. That'll be good, as we are going to need to have a small ship delivered and, oh no. No, this can't be right. Oh, this is bad. Of course, the universe just saved this crap for when we were backed into a corner. Something in her partner's tone made Chamiel look over the side of the hollow terminal and squint at the first page her partner had pulled from the folder. It was a picture of a large man wearing faded blue armor, and there was large font above the picture. "Who is Chamiel?" she asked. Damocles' mouth went dry as he dredged up ancient memories. "He is a Legion angel, Cham." He pulled the rest of the stack of flimsies from the folder to quickly leaf through, and Speed read them. This is impossible. All angels are biologically sterile. He must have adopted a kid or something. Weird little hobby of his, but whatever. All right, this one here has the info for who took. The pages fell out of the angel's hands as he leaned forward to steady himself on the terminal. His eyes were closed, and he was clearly trying deep breathing exercises to calm down. Chamiel was looking down on the deck plating where the pages had fallen, but she was not seeing what had caused her partner distress. "Damn," she asked. "You okay?" According to this, Chamiel was able to have a child. An actual God's honest mortal child. We should have asked for more money. We just volunteered for a suicide mission to take an abducted child back from Ahura Mazda. You know, the same creator responsible for the current wars raging in this universe and others. He pushed himself away from the console to walk about with his fists on his hips as he looked to the overhead, as if praying for a miracle. Chamiel stared back at him for a few moments until the words sank home. She closed her eyes and said, "We can't take on a creator, Dam, not even with our old unit. Do you know of any creators who would be willing and stupid enough to help us? We could ask His Holiness for help, but rumor has it, he does not like us anymore." Damocles paced back and forth, rubbing his eyes while trying to recall any useful information which would help him. Though he technically had an eidetic memory like all beings of spirit, the steady march of time all but made remembering current events difficult. Damocles stopped in his tracks as the only idea he could think of hit him in the face. He began snapping his fingers while trying to remember where he put something. In an almost manic episode, Damocles rushed into his office and began throwing things around. Chamiel said nothing while she stood by the open door offering her silent support. Her memory was even worse these days than her partner. After a few minutes, Damocles began to laugh like a drunken fool as he held up a small red gambling chit in the air like a priest would a cup of wine during Mass. Chamiel tilted her head to the side as she stared at it. An arcade token? Are we going to go play games? This might just save our butts, old girl, Damocles said, while moving back into the common section of the asteroid to the main hollow terminal. He stared at the tiny, time-worn writing on the back of the chit and diligently punched the dialing address into the quantum communicator. The two host angels were forced to sit through a horrible off-key rendition of a Jotun drinking song for several long minutes, and repetitions until the towering hologram of an imposing figure filled the air above the terminal. The physical perfection of the individual displayed could only have come from a creator. a creator who was entirely nude and wholly angry at this disruption, as if something needed to be murdered in a gruesome manner. 5 naked women were seen glaring from around the sides of the creator, each just as large as Damocles and his partner, each just as angry. The rumbling voice of the naked creator filling the air was like 2 glaciers grinding together. "By hell's frozen teeth, what do you want at this ungodly hour? And how did you get this number?" Damocles swallowed nervously and held up the token so that it was clearly visible for the creator, and said, "Please forgive me, but I need your help, Creator Freyr." The angry creator stared back with a look of absolute confusion as he went through a similar process of memory recall. Although Creator Freyr was rumored to be billions of years old and had a much harder time remembering specific events unless they were attached to powerful emotions. "Damocles, right?" Freyr finally said. "You earned that boon from me some 30,000 years ago. Why are you just now cashing it in?" Damocles decided to go with the truth. "I tossed it into my desk drawer and forgot about it, Holy One." The creator held out his arms as a woman fielding impressive scars draped a robe about him. He belted the robe closed and said, "Damn inconvenient time for me to have to honor my word, boy. But I did give it. What is it you wish of me?" "If memory serves me right, I said I would help you with whatever matter you asked of me, if you beat me in poker. I have just accepted a contract from the Legion to find and bring home an abducted mortal child. The child was supposedly abducted by Ahura Mazda." Creator Freyr stared horrified at the camera before he threw his head back and laughed. "Boy," he said, "I cannot believe you won that boon with such garbage luck, as fate most assuredly hates you. I said I would help you, not willingly walk to my doom." A puzzled look came over the creator's face. "Wait a minute. You mentioned the Legion. Why would they, of all people, need you to help get a single mortal back?" "I do not know, Holy One. They claimed politics." "Of course they did," Freyr mumbled. "Do you remember the name of the one who gave you this suicide mission?" Damocles nodded and said, "She said her name was Centurion Amy Gulliver." All humor drained from the Aesir creator's face as he leaned forward to rest his hands on his terminal and give Damocles his full and undivided attention. Damocles knew the assignment he took had a complication, and the creator's body language confirmed in stone his assumption. "All Father's bloody eye, boy. Do you know who in the hell it was you just talked to?" No," Damocles replied lamely, feeling again the sense of wrongness as his stomach twisted itself into knots. Freyr took a slow breath and said, "According to Odin's sources, Amy Gulliver is— Never mind, you would not know who that is anyway. Did you see my older brother with her?" Damocles shook his head as his heart started to hammer in his chest, as he knew who the creator was referring to. The older brother meant the leader of the Legion, Creator Lucifer. "Boy," Freyr said. He opened his mouth to speak, then closed it as if considering some vast chess game. "If she is involved, then my older brother is as well. Personally, if the rumors Odin says are true, then he is. Never mind. If we play this right, we might be able to wring some concessions out of the Legion for the Aesir, and also keep you alive to get paid." "Very well, Damocles. I will help you. How much are they paying you for this service they are unwilling to take on themselves?" Chamiel stepped forward and said, 500,000 ducats up front, plus a weekly stipend and traveling expenses." "What?" Freyr roared as he slapped the sides of his terminal hard enough to cause static half a universe away. "Those cheap bastards! For this, I'll get you your money, Angel. You can be sure of that." It took Creator Friar a few moments to regain his composure, as the concept of money was something his people took very seriously. "All right, come to Lund, and we can plan our trip from here." Damocles winced as he said, "Sorry, Holy One, but the bills have not been kind to me this month. I currently do not have a ship, and it is just me and Chamiel here." Freya turned to regard the female angel. "You do not remember me from your father's halls, do you?" Chamiel frowned and shook her head. "No," she replied. "Damocles says I suffered some kind of incident and lost a lot of my memories after we were beaten by the heretics. I'm sorry, but I have a hard time remembering lots of stuff these days." Freya mouthed the words, "Must be nice," before looking back to Damocles. "All righty then, boy. Send me your coordinates, and I will be there with a couple of my girls. If we need more muscle than that, well, we can only hope our deaths will be worthy of a song or two."